Life has a way of whispering its secrets when we least expect it, and often, those whispers sound like silence, like unanswered prayers, like nights that feel longer than they should. This is the story of Emily Carter, a woman who carried both heartbreak and hope inside her heart, and whose journey reminds us that sometimes, the lessons we resist the most are the ones that save us. Emily grew up in a small town in Ohio, where the streets were quiet and people smiled politely at one another in grocery store aisles. She was a bright child, always curious, always asking questions about the stars and the meaning of things, as if she were born searching for something bigger than herself. By the time she was 26, Emily thought she had her life figured out. She was engaged to a man she loved deeply, had a steady job at a local library, and dreamed of a future filled with family, laughter, and stability. She was the kind of person who believed that good people deserved good endings. But life doesn't always play by our expectations. 2 months before her wedding, Emily's fiancé, Michael, ended things. There was no fight, no betrayal, no dramatic ending. He simply said he didn't feel the same anymore, that something inside him had changed, and he couldn't marry her with half a heart. His words shattered her world in a way she could barely comprehend. One moment, she was planning flowers and invitations, the next, she was staring at her own reflection in the mirror, asking questions that had no answers. In the days that followed, loneliness moved into her chest like an unwelcome guest. The house felt too big, the silence too loud. She tried to keep herself busy at the library, stacking books, smiling at children, recommending novels to strangers, but inside, she was unraveling. Every time she saw a bride in a magazine or a couple walking hand in hand, she felt the sting of her broken dreams. Nights became the hardest. Lying in bed, she replayed every memory, every conversation, every laugh they had shared, wondering what she had missed, what she had done wrong. Weeks turned into months, and though the sharpness of the pain dulled, a heavy fog of self-doubt lingered. She began to question her worth, not just as a partner, but as a person. Was she unlovable? Was she destined to be alone? She wore her sadness quietly, like a heavy coat, invisible to others but impossible for her to take off. Her friends tried to help. They took her to dinners, sent her hopeful quotes, and reminded her that everything happens for a reason. But the truth was, Emily didn't want clichés, she wanted understanding. She wanted someone to sit with her in the silence and not try to fix it. One evening, after another long day of pretending to be okay, Emily went for a walk near the river that cut through her town. The sky was painted in shades of gold and purple, the kind of sunset that almost forces you to pause. She sat on a bench, staring at the water, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to cry, not the silent tears she shed in her room, but the deep, shaking sobs of a heart that was finally admitting how broken it was. An older woman passing by noticed her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't ask what was wrong, didn't offer advice. She just sat beside Emily and watched the river with her. After a long silence, the woman said softly, "The river never asks why the rocks try to stop it. It just keeps moving, slowly, gently, carving its way forward. That's how we survive the hard things. We don't fight them all at once. We move, a little at a time, until the path becomes clear." The woman stood up, gave Emily a small smile, and walked away, leaving her with words that echoed like a prayer. That night, Emily thought about the river. She thought about how, despite obstacles, the water kept flowing, reshaping itself, finding new ways forward. Something about that image gave her a strange kind of comfort. She realized she didn't have to heal overnight. She didn't have to erase her pain in one grand moment. Maybe she just had to keep moving, even if it was only a small step at a time. So she began. The next morning, she woke up and made herself breakfast, not because she was hungry, but because she deserved the care. She started journaling, pouring out her thoughts onto paper, unfiltered and raw, like giving her pain a safe place to rest. She began volunteering at a community center on weekends, helping children with their reading. At first, it was just a distraction, but slowly, she started to find pieces of herself in the laughter of those kids, in the way they saw the world with wonder. Still, healing wasn't a straight line. There were nights when loneliness crept back in, when the silence of her empty house felt unbearable. But every time she felt like she was slipping, she remembered the river. She reminded herself that moving forward didn't mean rushing, it meant refusing to stay stuck. As the seasons changed, so did she. Autumn painted her town in shades of amber and rust, and Emily found beauty in the quiet walks she once dreaded. Winter came, and though the cold pressed against her windows, she found warmth in small rituals, reading by candlelight, making soup, calling her mother just to hear her voice. Spring arrived, and with it, a fragile hope. She started planting flowers in her backyard, something she had never cared about before, and watched as tiny green shoots pushed their way through the soil. She saw herself in them, fragile, but determined. And then came the summer, a year after her heartbreak. Emily wasn't the same person she had been. She still carried scars, yes, but they no longer defined her. She had learned to see herself not as someone who was left behind, but as someone who had survived, who had endured, who had discovered strength she didn't know she had. One day, while shelving books at the library, she came across a little boy who was crying because he had lost his favorite storybook. Emily knelt beside him, helped him search, and when they finally found it, his face lit up with joy. In that moment, she felt something shift inside her. She realized that her pain had taught her empathy, had deepened her ability to connect with others. Her heartbreak had carved out space in her for compassion, for patience, for understanding. Months later, Emily met someone new. His name was Daniel, a quiet man with kind eyes who came to the library often. Their conversation started with books, but soon drifted into life, dreams, and fears. Emily was cautious at first, afraid of being hurt again, but Daniel wasn't in a hurry. He respected her pace, never asking for more than she was ready to give. And slowly, without even noticing, Emily's heart began to open again. She wasn't looking for someone to complete her anymore, she had already learned to stand whole on her own. But with Daniel, she found companionship, trust, and laughter, things that felt like gifts, not necessities. Looking back, Emily realized that her heartbreak had been the beginning, not the end. Losing Michael had broken her, but it had also stripped away illusions and forced her to meet herself honestly. In her loneliness, she had discovered her own strength. In her pain, she had found patience. In her silence, she had learned to listen to the quiet wisdom of life. And she remembered the words of the old woman by the river. She was like the water now, moving, reshaping, finding her way forward. She understood that life's hidden lessons often come wrapped in loss, in failure, in the moments we wish had never happened. But those lessons are the ones that shape us, the ones that teach us to see beauty in resilience, hope in hopelessness, light in the darkest nights. Emily's story wasn't extraordinary, yet it carried the extraordinary truth of being human, that we are fragile and strong at the same time, that we break but we heal, that endings are often disguised beginnings. And as she sat once again by the river, watching the water flow gently under the fading sunset, she smiled, not because life was perfect, but because she had learned that perfection was never the point. The point was to keep moving, to keep believing, and to trust that every heartbreak, every struggle, every loss, was guiding her toward a deeper, softer, truer version of herself.